So we do have the truth, and we have the youth. What we don't have today is the presence that was always with us, and that's Dr. Mildred Jefferson, who went to her eternal reward within the last few months. She was always here. She was always able to encourage us, and we missed her. And someone who worked with her at National Right to Life was Thea Rossi Barron. I'd like to call her up and for some of her memories of Dr. Mildred Jefferson. Thea?
Thank you, Father, very much. Any of you who have known Dr. Jefferson, and I suspect everyone in this room has at some point, knows that I am a very small replacement for her because she was bigger than life. There was no one like her that I've ever met in my lifetime. And so I'm very honored that Anne asked me to come and just share some memories with you of working with her. In 1975, I moved to the Washington area from Michigan. I've been practicing law there for about 11 years, and I moved here with my children. And quite by accident, I ran into Dr. Jefferson. Well, you can say accident, but you and I know who that is. You know, the Holy Spirit moves in these mysterious ways, because I went up to the Right to Life office in the press building just to volunteer my time while I was job hunting, as I wanted to volunteer as a speaker. I had done that back in Michigan, so I thought, well, I have some time, I'll do it again. It happened to be the day she was in town, and she was not here every day. And some of you, I apologize, if you were at her memorial service, I made some very similar remarks at that time. So if I'm repeating myself, I apologize to you. But for others, so when I went up there that day, she was there, and I was not introduced to her by the director. For some reason, he just didn't. And I said, "Isn't that Dr. Jefferson?" And he said, "Yes." So I said, "Well, excuse me, I'm going to go introduce myself." So I went in the next room, introduced myself. She gave me that magnificent smile, and then, you know, took my card. She said, "Oh, yeah, I'll be in touch." And what I didn't know is she was trying to get money for a lobbyist for National Right to Life. They were basically an education organization at that point. And so come, you know, 6-8 months later in June, I got this call. And by that time, I had been waived into the DC bar and was practicing part-time with a DC firm. And she called and said, "I've got the funding. Would you like a job, you know, as our lobbyist? We would like to do this. We'd like to expand." She said, "But before you say yes, wait, because this is going to change your life." And of course, she was absolutely correct. I mean, I had spoken out on behalf of the unborn since like 1970 because it was just, as an attorney, it was a civil liberties issue for me. I couldn't believe it. I had taken, you know, personal injury cases where in a wrongful death you brought, of a pregnant woman, you brought two actions. The death of the mother, the death of the child, you know. Or automobile accident, you brought a suit for the injury to the child. So to have this case come out and to have was appalling. But anyway, I did accept the job. And it was my pleasure, once we set up this office in, and I added to the office in the National Press Building, it was my pleasure to bring Mildred up on the Hill. She would come in a couple times, several times a month, sometimes a couple times in a week. And these were prearranged visits. And I pretty much would have her meet senators because, of course, she was my trump card, you know. So the House, we had then 130, 140 pro-life members, Democrats and Republicans. My job was to work with Democrats. That had been my background. And the Republicans were, you know, with Henry Hyde, who was so much in the forefront. I was to work with the Democrats. And, but on the Senate side, that's where we always had trouble getting votes. So I brought Mildred up to meet the different senators. You know, Senator Brooke from Massachusetts, Senator Kennedy. Well, we never got those gentlemen's votes. But anyone I took her to visit came away, you know, terrifically impressed because the senator would tell me. I remember once Senator Bob Griffin from Michigan, I brought her in. Of course, you know, Mildred with her big bags, you know, one on each shoulder, carrying everything. And she comes in, great smile, and sits down and talks so beautifully and so compassionately about the unborn, and of course brings in her wonderful medical background. And the fact, of course, that she was Methodist. So Senator Griffin turns to me and he said, Thea, this is amazing. You couldn't create someone, you couldn't make up someone that is a black woman, surgeon, Methodist, articulate spokesman for the unborn. You couldn't have gotten anyone better. And that, of course, was Mildred. So everywhere we went, she usually brought a couple of people with her, a couple of tall, handsome drivers, gentlemen. She always would do that, so we were kind of a group as we walked around the halls of these Senate office buildings. And she was always very polite, very, always smiling. With Mildred, you got her point across with honey, not vinegar, ever. And, we know in our hearts, and I think I can say this, even, as an attorney, we know in our hearts we are right about the humanity of the unborn and their right to life and the dignity and the civil rights. We know we are right. Like Martin Luther King knew he was right, like all the people that fought against slavery. We know that, but we don't want to go in saying, we're right, you're wrong, because that's just not going to win anything. But you win it the way Mildred won it, by informing. And like the wonderful facts that the professor just gave you just now, those are really important responses to questions, because even though now you have two, possibly both pro-life senators here, it's a phenomenon for Massachusetts. Have things changed or what? They have changed tremendously that you would have that. So, but remember that there are going to be staff who don't agree with you and who may just deep six everything that you bring them. But in spite of that, assume that they are open-minded and they will listen. And that what your message will be as a person coming as a civil libertarian, not really as even though the involvement of all the faiths is very good in this issue and important and appropriate, we're not here as Catholics or Protestants or Jews or Muslims. We are here as people who know that as Americans, this is the right thing to do, because our fellow citizens are deprived of lives because of the action of the mother, of one person, and the action of a physician. So, since we're, as the professor said, a country of that is in love with free choices and with freedom, all we want to argue is we want to give that freedom to the unborn child, to our unborn sisters and brothers. So, if we go in with that kind of approach, that it is, that we're not, and I'm trying to disabuse people of any labels. You know they will put labels on it. I've had labels on me all my life because of my pro-life position. And so they'll put labels. Well, this isn't a label. We are fellow Americans working for the civil rights of our unborn brothers and sisters. And so if we come across that way, and as Mildred did, whatever facts are at your disposal on whatever issue that concerns them, whether it's the choice issue or whether it's rape or incest or a deformed child, possibly a deformed child, all of those issues, you have the answers, you express them with compassion, and you just hope for the best as far as the receptivity of the person. What you want, of course, is your message to get across to your senators. And maybe some of you here today have been able to actually get a meeting, with either Senator Brown or Senator Romney. I hope that is so. I hope there's a coalition that will actually be able to do that. But if you can't, remember the staff, they have their own opinions of things. So be as informative as you can. That was my role as a lobbyist. I gave them legislation I wanted them to pass. I gave them stuff. I gave them materials. So you just provide the materials because you know that their senator has to answer to all the people of Massachusetts. That's who they represent. But as the professor said, the tide is turning. The tide is turning very clearly in these last 10 years because all of the polls of the last couple of years, whether it's Gallup or the CBS, NBC poll, many of them will say more people than not now identify themselves as pro-life. That was never the case 10 years ago. But it has been growing. It got up to 30, 40. So you know this country, and I think it's because he mentioned the young people. As you'll see in the march, the young people, it's a pretty clear vision. You're not going to pull anything over their eyes because they have too much information at their disposal. They can get on Google and they can look at those live images of the child in utero. You know, no one's going to kid them. So they know it. As he said, they know that child could have been them and was at one point them, the child in utero. So you have this information, you reinforce it, and in a person's gut, they have to know that this isn't just a blob of something that you're taking out like an appendix. This is a human being. And if we treat everyone that way and give them information and do it with a wonderful smile that even if they say, and you probably will get some cynical and maybe hostile remarks today. I know I got them when I worked the Hill. And I would get remarks from people that, you know, would say, I thought you were more intelligent than that. You know, this kind of a put down. So you're going to get some remarks. You're going to get stonewalled. There are going to be a lot of responses that maybe you don't like. Well, as the professor said, it is something that takes a long time, and we're going to chip away at that indifference, because it is only by calling something choice instead of a real child that they can put a wall between them as to what is really going on, because no one wants to harm a child. No one. So in order to do that, they have to call it a choice. That's their defense. So your information chips away at that. And in your presence here, I want to thank you so much for coming. And I'm sure many of you have come for many, many years. And I think it's a tribute to your tenacity, which is what is going to win this battle. I don't know when Roe v. Wade will be overturned. I certainly hope it will be. But then when it is, let's just say not if, but when it is, the battle will go back to the states. And then we have in each state, you have to educate your state legislators, as I will educate mine in Virginia. That's where we go back to. But there's more hope there because those state legislators are closer to you. They're among you. You see them in a grocery store, you know, they're there. So that'll be another battle which we're all very capable of doing. And I just think that your presence here speaks reams about, as I say, the tenacity of the movement. Think of Nelson Mandela. I think of him. 27 years in prison. 27 years, and he comes out. I have never heard, and there's that wonderful film about him and the soccer team recently. You don't hear anything negative. It's positive about what's good for South Africa. He was working for the people. But look what he endured, 27 years, and then he became president. So all things are possible. And in my belief, of course, with God, all things are possible. So I thank you for coming. I wish you great success in your engagement with your senators and the staff and any members on the House side that you will be seeing. Now I know, you know, there's the Lipinski amendment coming up, the Lipinski bill, I've forgotten the exact title, no federal funds for abortion. It will make into legislation what we passed in the 1970s. The Hyde Amendment, you know, was an amendment to an appropriation bill, and every year it had to be redone. But Lipinski's bill actually makes it a law across the board that says the federal government will not pay for abortions. So I guess I neglected to say, I assumed you knew that our big accomplishment when I was a lobbyist with Mildred was that we did get the Hyde Amendment passed, and that has been the law ever since. Thank you. So I know, you have other speakers that are going to inform you and encourage you as you go forth. I thought I'm also a singer and a banjo player. Now I don't have my banjo here, but I would like us to sing before I leave something that I think is very appropriate to our civil rights, the civil rights momentum of this march. And if you'll join me, please. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. For deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. Thank you, and God bless you.